Welcome to the woods. And the birds are joining in as well. It's a nice day. I've got some building to do after this. In fact, I spent most of Sunday on my mini cabin build. And it was a joy. It's been a while since I've had to build anything, and just being outside in the woods, working with some timber, figuring out problems. No smartphone, no computer, was really enjoyable. And that kind of leads me into this video, which is going to be quite long. The dogs are joining in now. I'm going to cover quite a lot of subjects, and it might be considered a follow-on from my recent talk when I mentioned AI, artificial intelligence. And the reason for that is, over the last couple of weeks, I've seen these apps, these applications, Chat GTP or GPT, whatever it is, and Mid-Journey, the arts one. I've seen a couple of videos about music applications using AI. I listened to a podcast by the Fergan, Dan, brilliant podcast, discussing AI. So there's a lot of talk about this. Two content creators spring to mind because of things they both said. So one content creator said that already the AI chat app had revolutionized online marketing, and that it was an incredible tool. So this is a free piece of software available to the public and had already revolutionized a whole industry within a matter of months. And the second thing I heard somebody say, and they actually created, they didn't create anything, but AI had created a children's book. So the story and the artwork, and the comment was, whoever controls AI wins the propaganda war. And they're right. 100% right. Now I've got quite a few notes in a big book, so excuse me if I look down every now and then to see where I am, because I want to try and cover as much as I can. And this whole AI thing really worries me. And it worries me for loads of different reasons. The obvious ones have already been pointed out, that this is going to take away employment, jobs from people. And it already is. That's nothing that hasn't happened in the past. We saw that in the first industrial revolution, the mechanization of manufacturing. And we saw people fighting against that. Groups like the Luddites in Britain, who really wanted to protect skills, craftsmanship, and an income, used to break up these machines that were replacing the jobs of humans. But it didn't stop it. Opposition to this is going to be futile. There was opposition in the second industrial revolution with the electrification of everything, including manufacturing, which led to mass manufacturing. But the opposition didn't stop it. I still remember the third industrial revolution. I lived through it. The computerization. I saw it creep in surreptitiously. How it was going to make life so much easier. How it was going to make everything more convenient. I remember my parents bringing home the first home computer we had. I still remember the ZX Spectrum and the Commodore 64. I remember loading games on a cassette tape and waiting 3 hours for it to eventually crash, and then I'd have to start all over again. I remember my father using it for word processing, rarely, but trying to explain to my mum that it was more than just a toy. And I saw the first introductions of the mobile phone. I remember the very first mobile phones that were actually the size of a suitcase, with a huge aerial, and the handset was a telephone handset. Many of you won't remember these things. And I remember watching mobile phones get smaller and smaller and smaller. And now in reverse, mobile phones getting larger and larger and larger. I remember when the internet took hold. And all of this was said to be great tools that we could use for our advantage to make life easier, faster, quicker, more efficient. And I don't think there's anyone watching this who will disagree with that. Yes, it wiped out large swathes of employment in the design, typists, a lot of secretaries went by the way, and it created as many jobs as it destroyed. So people were being trained up in IT and computer programming and computer technologies instead of old skills. But the thing I want to reiterate here is we don't go backwards. We've never gone back to a time before these things. We haven't reverted back to a time before mechanisation. We haven't gone back to a time before the electrification. And we haven't gone back to a time before computerisation. And we will not, society will not go back to a time before AI. And artificial intelligence, as much as the argument can be made that this isn't at the moment real AI, I don't really want to go down that road. What's being shown to the public is really only the tip of the iceberg. We all understand that. We all understand that the stuff that's being released now and is free of charge for you to use has probably been available for years behind the scenes. And it's only free up to a certain point. And it starts, as always, like those home computers, as a tool that we can use, but rapidly becomes an everyday necessity that we cannot do without. An everyday necessity that we cannot do without. Take your job. And now take away the computers. All of them. The ones that unlock the doors. The computers you use every day to order stock or do whatever you do. The till. Even my job, which is a hands-on, art-based industry, I use a computer every day. If the computer wasn't there and wasn't available, my job would drastically change. I would not be able to do the things I do today without it. These things that are once tools that we can use or not use rapidly become completely necessary. And we cannot go back to what we were doing before. How crazy is that? And the reason is, the way things were done before is consigned to the bin, consigned to the history books. If you had to get rid of the computer and you went to buy a typewriter, where would you buy a typewriter? Nowhere sells them. If you managed to get one which would be classed as an antique, where would you buy the ribbon from? Nobody manufactures typewriter ribbons. Not only do they not manufacture typewriter ribbons, but the manufacturers of the cloth that made the ribbon no longer make it in that width or that depth. Why? Because the people that made the typewriter ribbons no longer make them, so there is no demand, and therefore we can't go back. And the skills we had before are lost. In those early days of mechanicalisation, that first industrial revolution, the Luddites that started were hosiers, making tights and leggings. How many people do you know today that could weave a cloth by hand that tight? None. because we can't go back. The skills have been lost. And what I'm trying to get to here is AI has brought us to an apex point. AI is not an app or a tool. It's the very beginning of the fourth industrial revolution. We will not be able to go back to a time before this point. To a time when things were natural. Because in a very short period of time, everything is going to become unnatural and highly regulated. And a lot of it off limits. Because AI changes everything. Let me see if I can find the study in my notes. When I say changes everything, I can't find it. It is here. If you leave a message in the comments, I can send the study to you. It's a study done by Oxford University and Yale University. Two fairly prestigious institutions. And they both concluded that AI will replace by automation all human tasks within 45 years. AI will be able to reduce our need to work in the blink of an eye. Automation is already at the point where it can do almost anything, combined with artificial intelligence that can tell it how to do it. Employment can be, in nearly all cases, eradicated. Now, I'm fairly sure, and I'm sure you'll understand this, that the people who are running things have been well aware of how powerful this AI is for quite a long time. We kind of understand that when something comes to market, it's usually 5 to 10 years old. It's been in the pipeline for quite a while. They've now got to get their money back. So they won't be releasing the next thing they've already designed until they've sold this, enough of this to get their money back. Everything's about 5 years old. So let's say AI is the same. Let's say that they've had this for 5-10 years. And they know the possibilities and they know the capabilities. And they realise that this is going to wipe out employment. What does that mean? Well, if you can't work, you can't earn money. And if you're not earning money, you can't be taxed. Forget the fact that you can't buy anything and you can't feed yourself because you can't buy food. You can't be taxed. And if you can't be taxed, the government makes no money. And if the government hasn't got any money, it ceases to be viable. Let that sink in. Without employment, the people have no money. Without money, the government can't tax them. And if without tax, it has no money. It is unviable. Governments become useless. So this is a problem. And this is a problem they have quite obviously studied and looked at. Now, some of us have noticed that during the last 2 or 3 years, our governments didn't seem to be anything but an administrative arm of a much larger global organisation. Some of us had noticed that regardless of the fact we're supposed to be living in a liberal democracy, nothing the people actually wanted was being done. That everything seems to be trickling down from the top, regardless of it's wanted or not. It would seem to some that our governments are already unviable. And I would say that maybe they're just getting used to their new role. Because if national governments can't control things, somebody's going to have to step into that breach. You're not going to have a vacuum. And this also ties into the fact that the whole financial system that we've been living with for hundreds of years is about to change drastically. Probably more than they're actually going to let us know. It's the reason these digital currencies, central bank digital currencies, global digital currencies are being talked about while it's being drip fed to the public to make sure that they're aware that it's nothing to be afraid of, it's just a new system, everything will be fine. If AI works like it can, like it's predicted to, you won't need to work. If you don't need to work, you can't earn money. And if there's no money, the whole system has to change. Now that doesn't mean for 1 minute that the people who control money, and have for a very long time, it doesn't mean that the banks are just going to give up on the trillions and trillions of dollars and pounds and Deutschmarks of debt these countries owe them. Oh well, there's no money coming in, we'll just let you off then. That's not going to happen. But if there's no money, and it does look like there's going to be no money, the people in power are going to be the people who control real world assets. Land, water, people. And I hate to think that where this leads, but if you default on your mortgage, the bank will take your house. If you're a country and you default on your repayments, what does the bank take? What does the bank take if there's not a possibility of you ever paying it back? The land, the water, the people? Does it own the people? I don't know. But AI has now got us to this point, to this apex, where everything is going to change. This is why in the last 2 to 3 years you have seen a massive push forward with incredible deadlines like 2030. But they're going to get rid of cars. They're going to restrict your movements into 15-minute cities, 20-minute neighbourhoods. They're going to start building mega cities, 3-state, tri-state conglomerations. You will be allowed here, you won't be allowed there. Whereas before you were restricted with your money, you're free to go everywhere, but only if you can afford it. Now they'll need to find a new way to restrict you, to control you. And I dare say that they've gameplayed all of this. I dare say they've plugged it into AI. If they've got an end goal, surely AI could tell them the best way to get there. And maybe that's why everything seems so inhuman, so bizarre. Maybe that's why we call it Clown World. Maybe there's very little human thought behind it. We see more and more strategies being put into place that make no sense. I see a lot of talk and a lot of demonstrations. People are getting angry. Demonstrations in Oxford last week against the 15-minute cities. Demonstrations in Liverpool against the mass immigration of different peoples into the country. Why would they be doing these things? Why would they be importing millions of people? It's not very democratic. Every time the public have been asked, they don't want any more immigration. Keith Woods recently did a very good video, and in it he pointed to a study that had been done recently, a study of 87 other studies, and those 87 other studies were all to do with what happens when you diversify a country. Is this diversity a strength? And in all 87 studies, the conclusion was that mass immigration on the scale we're seeing today is a net negative all the way round. It benefits no one. It leads to unhappiness. It leads to animosity. It leads to every negative emotion you could think of. It destroys social cohesion. It destroys social trust. It destroys communities. And yet still they continue to do it. Why? Why would they do this? Even on environmental grounds, it makes no sense. If you take someone from Africa and you put them in the UK, their carbon footprint rises by 300%. It triples. I thought they wanted to lower these carbon footprints. They're telling us that we need to consume less. Take someone from Asia, put them in the UK, and their consumptions of goods and services rises by 3 times again. It makes no sense. But still they push ahead with it. So we need to ask ourselves, what could that end goal be? What could the end goal be for these people that entails them doing things that make no sense to try and restrict our freedom to an area of 15 minutes? To tell you that you can no longer camp on the moors, that you can no longer walk in the woods. Why should you need to? Put on a set of AI goggles. Visit wherever you want in the metaverse. At least that way you'll be doing no harm. At every turn, it's restrictions and control for us. And it doesn't need to be that way. The problem is they expect you to fight back now. Don't think they've not gameplayed this. They know that you're going to oppose some of these measures they're putting in place. And they know exactly the best way to get round it. They know at some points things are going to turn violent. They did in Liverpool 2 weeks ago. And they'll use things like that to clamp down even harder. I wouldn't be at all surprised if you see small concessions. If you see a small diminished number of people arriving, that they'll be able to dangle in front of your eyes and say, hey, look, we're trying. They've done all this before. But we're now at a point where everything is going to change. My advice: buy old books before they rewrite those. Learn real life skills. Gain as much knowledge about things that are going to help you in real life. Learn how to plant food. learn how to keep livestock. Because when these digital currencies come in, which they're going to come in, you're going to need a digital ID. 90% of people I know will get the ID, will take the currencies, will slowly walk into the prison cell. For those of us that will not have the ID, we'll be locked out. They've trial run this. They've already gameplayed it. They know there's going to be a very small percentage of people who will refuse. I don't think they're going to clamp down too hard on us. Our saving grace today is that our numbers are insignificant. We're like a fly on an elephant's back. We can't go back. Society has never gone back to a time before. This AI is right at the bottom of a very, very steep curve. By the time it gets to the top, in a few years, everything will be different. And you're either going to play along with their game, or you're going to opt out. I would suggest you opt out. And I would suggest that you talk to other people. And I understand that that's increasingly difficult. It was funny, I was talking the other day how some of the younger generation just seem quite stupid. And I looked into it, and IQ is dropping, and it has been dropping since 1975, every year. And that was a study of over 730,000. Quite a large study group. And every year, IQ gets lower. And the funny thing is that seems to correlate with the advancement of technology and the internet. And you would have thought that with all that knowledge available and all that technological know-how, that people might get brighter. But the opposite is true. People are getting dumber. And I think that may be what they want. People can't concentrate for long periods of time. Makes it difficult to work out complex situations. People's attention span has shortened. None of these things are by accident. I think they've known for a long time that this AI was going to change everything. And now they're just playing out their route, their map. And I don't think there's much you can do about it. I don't think you protesting in the streets or me protesting in the streets in Oxford is going to stop them. 2,000, 5,000, 1 million. I've seen numbers like this in the streets, and they did nothing. But what you do have control of is you. You have control of you. You can choose to not take part. They're expecting you to fight back. They're not expecting you to walk away. Walk away, and with people of a like mind, build something better. But we're going to have to start now. We need to come together. You need to find your tribe. We need to network. We need to promote our businesses. We need to work out how we move forward if we're shut out of society. I know a lot of people think this AI is harmless. Do some research yourself. Look at what every study has said. AI is capable of changing everything. Just look at what the computer did. Nearly every job. Even the smartphone. For those of you who don't have a smartphone, I offer a round of applause. A friend of mine who has been adamant he'd never use a smartphone had to use his wife's smartphone just to open a bank account. It becomes a necessity. And without it, you can't do the things that you may need to do to survive. They make it a requirement. And the old skills are lost. Which I still find incredible. And here's a scary thing. If you've got a smartphone and you promised yourself you'll never use it that often, you may even think that you don't use it that often. Just check your usage. You can do it. Go into settings. Check your data usage. Do you know that in this country, in the UK, an average 15-year-old is online, usually on their smartphone, 36 hours a week. That's a full working week. 36 hours a week on average. And as it becomes more necessary and the more integral to everyday life, that will rise from 36 to 46 and 46 to non-stop. All of the time. Completely plugged in. Until we reach a point where everything's automated and nothing is real, and we've forgotten how to do anything, where all skills are lost. What a terrifying thought. And it does make me uneasy. And I do worry. And then I get back to doing something real. I get back to just looking around here, I get back to building a workshop, working with timber, using my hands, walking through the woods. And I know what reality is, and I know it's being taken away, and I know they're going to try and restrict it. And it makes me angry. It makes me angry that my grandchildren may never know a life like this. May never know what it's like to just sit in the woods, listen to the birds, and they may never know that because some jumped up little gobshite in Davos has run something through his AI program and said that maybe it's not best. Find your tribe, get together. We've got to build something better than what they've got planned. Speak to you soon, people.